All right, thanks for coming today. My name is Emily Tate. I am a product manager at Pivotal Labs out of our Dallas office. And today I want to talk about building product in large enterprises. I spent a lot of my career, or actually really the majority of my career, in large enterprises building products. The significant chunk was with a large travel technology company. And I remember one of my senior leaders coming back one day when I was working in an innovation business unit, talking about an executive meeting where our CEO was furious because he felt our innovation wasn't going fast enough and we weren't doing enough as a large enterprise in the travel space. He started talking about why we as a company should have been the ones to invent Uber. This was back at the point when you wanted to invent Uber, but he basically said, we are the leaders in the travel space. We have the money, we have the resources, we have the domain knowledge. Why are we not the ones that are inventing things like Uber? Why are we letting small little startups over here come and invade our space? As I talked this over with my leader, I said, I know why we couldn't build Uber. If we had thought of Uber, we would have killed it before it ever got into the hands of a user. It would have been really easy. We would have started with this nice little fledgling idea, and everyone would have started piling on their pet projects and their thing to get a piece of it. So you would have had the first people saying, I know we just need like a little bit of login, don't need a bunch of information, but we've been working for 2 years on this new profile system. Nobody's using it yet because it's really hard to implement, so we'd love if you could use that for this project so we could start to get people on it. Increase your timeline. Then someone else would come and say, well, we've got a new contract with a big credit card provider. I think what we really need to do is make sure that we only have one payment partner. You can't use this app unless you have our payment partner. It'll make them really happy, and then we've got a really large deal over here, and that'll help us close that deal. So we need to restrict it down to that. And then you'd have someone come and say, okay, I know this is a consumer product, but we work with travel agents. They're going to be really mad if they can't book things through this as well, if they can't get their commission. So we need to make sure that we can't release it to users until the agencies can get their commission too. Continue on, we'd say, well, we've got MapQuest maps. We have a contract that they're our exclusive provider. By the way, they don't have any mobile-enabled maps yet. So maybe we should start with desktop, even though this is supposed to be a mobile solution, and we can eventually get it on there. And, corporations, they always want to have control. We can't just put this out there and let anyone do it. Did I mention we only have 2 releases a year? So make sure that you get it all done at once, because if you don't, you're not touching it again for another 6 months. Before long, we would just keep adding thing after thing after thing on top until you just want to die. And this little fledgling product that's Uber would never have existed if it had started in an enterprise organization. It's frustrating, but we all knew it was true. We didn't get into tech to come in and pile on weight after weight after weight onto things and make things miserable to work in. I know most of us started into tech because we wanted to be like this guy. We wanted to build some really cool things. We wanted to change the world. We wanted to work for some awesome brands, disrupt industries, really solve the world's biggest and hardest and most important problems. Maybe not that one, but we wanted to do something really cool. But instead, for those of us who landed in an enterprise world, most of the time, we just end up feeling kind of like this guy. I get an email every morning, I've gotten it for years, called the Daily Dilbert. And this email is just a single strip from Scott Adams' iconic cartoon. Most mornings, I look at it and just start laughing and shaking my head because it is far too close to home. How many of you have had that experience where you get your email, you see the cartoon, and you just laugh and you immediately go, I got to forward this to my boss. I got to forward this to my coworker. Because we all know that this is really what happens. One of my very favorite examples, this one's actually pretty recent, talking about timelines and dates and expectations. We've all had it. How fast can you fix the bug? I won't know till I dig in. Well, just give me a date. I promise you I won't hold you to it. I won't ever talk about it again. You argue with them until you finally give the date. That gets put in a PowerPoint presentation. It gets committed to, put into your goals, and all of a sudden your company's stock price is completely dependent on you hitting this false date that you made up just because you had to give a date to someone. It's incredibly frustrating. So how do we get here? Why can startups move so efficiently? Why can't we make this happen in an enterprise setting? Enterprises have so much more money. They have a lot of times nearly unlimited resources. There's a lot of smart people in these companies. It's not dumb people working in enterprises. Why can't we do this in an enterprise setting? Really, the answer lies a lot in complexity. There is a big difference in the complexity of a single product startup and an enterprise organization that is managing a portfolio of 100 products. The vision and strategy that you can align everyone behind and set when your product is your business strategy is very different when you have to manage a vision and a strategy that can apply across multiple business units, multiple lines, multiple verticals in a lot of cases. So there are just additional pieces of complexity, but enterprises didn't always start out that way. Complexity grows with a company's size. When you think about the ability to turn a big company versus a small company, it's really easy to think about it as a sports car versus an 18-wheeler. You can maneuver a sports car through a lot of different things, make turns on a dime, adjust as you see different things. When you have a giant, massive semi-trailer, you just don't have the ability to turn as quickly as you can. We're here in San Francisco. Would you like to see a semi try to go on Lombard Street and maneuver all those tiny little curves? You just can't do it. And in a lot of cases, the more that you start to turn, there are actually institutional momentum against change, not things that are helping push you forward. In addition, complexity grows with a company's experiences. Companies didn't start out with just massive processes and massive roadblocks getting in the way of doing good work. It typically starts out where one little thing happens and you put in a process so that it doesn't happen again. And then something different happens and you put in another process to ensure that doesn't happen again. And then you have an outage and you need to get to a root cause, and then you try to figure out how to make sure that that root cause never happens again. And before long, you've got a massive, complex system of processes to manage. We've got Dilbert here. He wants to upgrade his computer. He has to go through all of these different forms and teams and approvals and processes. And most of those probably came out because an employee did something that was considered uneconomical, and make sure that we never have that happen again. And before long, you are just completely buried in red tape. And a lot of times, most people don't even know where a lot of these rules and these processes came from. As these organizations grow over years and years, these processes just get accepted as, yes, they're absolutely necessary. They make sense, without anyone ever understanding why they're there in the first place. And complexity grows as a company adapts. It wouldn't be a tech conference if we didn't have the famous Mark Andreessen quote, "Software is eating the world." We all know that basically every company now, no matter what industry you're in, is a software company. But if you look at the Fortune 10, the top 10 companies according to Fortune, only one of those actually started off as a tech company. Walmart did not start off as a tech company. Even AT&T, I've had people kind of call me on this and say, AT&T is a tech company. No, they're not, they're telecoms. They started off laying phone lines. It's a type of tech, but not a software business. So these companies that started off in these industries have had to adapt to a world in which everyone is a software company. And so they started off with some innocent growth, and then they adapt and they build and they evolve, and eventually it just ends up leaving you feeling like this. A lot of the challenges with enterprise companies start at the top. If I could change one thing about building products in enterprise organizations, it would be the funding model. At the end of the day, I really believe that the funding model in enterprise organizations is broken, and a lot of the issues that come out of enterprise tech stems from this issue. So let's walk through a typical enterprise funding model. It usually starts, so for 2018, actually probably started this past June. And it starts off where teams will brainstorm a list of projects, typically without even talking to customers. You sit in a room and you just kind of start typing them out on Excel. You estimate the project effort and timelines because we know how long things are going to take to build. You submit it to an executive committee, and then you wait as a product manager, and you wait, and you wait. And you eventually find out with an edict from on high what projects get approved. From there, you put it in a lovely Gantt chart with dates and timelines and estimates of how long these things are going to take to make. And then you go and you execute your plan and take over the world. Everything goes perfectly, right? Not so much. The downsides of traditional funding models. First of all, it leaves no room for discovery. We're assuming back in June that we know exactly what our customers are going to need the following October. You don't have a crystal ball. You can't see things that clearly. And it doesn't allow enough, when you line up the projects, you typically line them up back to back. So I think that that project A is going to take 3 months. I think project B is going to take 5 months. I think project C is going to take 4 months. And you just line them up side by side with no space in between to allow your team time to actually go and do the research that needs to be done to validate that what you're building is the right thing to build. It removes product autonomy. When you've got a large organization and you've got all of these different products, and you have your chief financial officer deciding at a line item level which projects should be funded and what every individual product needs, it's not a model that's going to allow product teams to have the autonomy they need to meet their customers' needs as the market changes during the year. And finally, success is measured in outputs, on time and on budget. That is typically the measure of success in an enterprise organization. There's no discussion about outcomes. People will make business cases that explain why their project should be funded, but those business cases go into a folder that ends up getting deleted, no one ever looks at again, and actually validates that what they claimed they were going to do came true. The only thing that matters is if you got the list of features you said you were going to build, and if you got them out into the market on time and on budget. So if you are in a position, if you're a chief financial officer, chief product officer, VP, at a level where you can actually influence the funding model of your company, my edict to you today is go do it. Start talking to your peers and figuring out how you can fund products instead of projects. But for a lot of us in here, we aren't in a position to be able to change those things. So with us, change has to kind of start from within. And I have a few ways that you can go back and start to make some of those changes wherever you are in the organization. First, particularly if you're in product management or you own a product, advocate for outcome-driven prioritization. So we talked about those timelines. You get your list of priorities and you start putting them into a roadmap. And most of the time, it ends up looking something like this. A Gantt chart with dates and exactly lists of features that are going out. But this doesn't really give you, again, that room for discovery, the room to understand really what your customers are needing. There's a thought leader in this space named Teresa Torres, who I really admire. She has a quote. She says, "A feature-based roadmap does create a sense of certainty. It does tell the rest of your team what you're releasing and when, allowing them to plan their activities and set expectations with customers. But it does this based on a foundation of lies." And that's really the truth of it. When we go out and we say, here's an estimate of how long something's going to take us to build, we all know that that is just a number pulled out of thin air. We have no idea what we're going to encounter or what the end product's going to look like. We go in with a scope and we tell people, here's the feature we're going to build and all of the things that it's going to do. But when we actually get into the day-to-day and you start to build things out, things take longer, so you have to cut some scope, or you realize as you test it with customers, it's not working the way you want, and now you're having to go back and tell your sales team that things have changed. This was my roadmap on the last product that I owned before coming to Pivotal. It's lovely. It's got lots of sticky notes on a wall that are different colors, signify different things. Those are dates along the top. I did not follow some of my own advice in some of these cases. And I loved my roadmap. It was really pretty. Over several years, I started tracking what the roadmap looked like at the beginning of the year and what it looked like at the end of the year, what we actually did. Because we didn't stick with the dates in our roadmap. We didn't make this plan in stone. Reevaluated it every single month to make sure we were addressing the right needs of the market, changing things as new things came up. So how much of my date-driven, feature-based roadmap actually got completed in a year? When I measured it, it was 20%. Only 20% of the plan that I put in place at the beginning of the year actually survived contact with reality and made it to the end of the year. So when we go into these date-driven, project-based roadmaps, you're setting yourself up for failure. Instead, use outcome-based goals. Rather than saying, here are the features that I'm going to build and here are the things I'm going to put into my product, just put a chunk of time on your roadmap to say, here's the outcome I want to fix for my customers. Here's the problems that I want to solve. And then let your team take the time to discover the best way to solve those problems. Look at theme-based roadmaps. Rather than being project-based, if you just say, we're going to spend the first quarter focusing on user onboarding. We know that we've got a problem with it. We have way too many people fall off at the front of the funnel. We're just going to research and understand why that's happening and how we can solve it. Or take a theme that your customers need with whatever your product does, and take some time to solve that problem. Learning backlogs is the other side that I really like. In enterprise products, oftentimes our products have been in market for a long time. Even if you are like one of the newer products in your company, that's usually 5 years old. There's a lot of change that happens in 5 years, and features that you had up front may not be relevant anymore or may not be working the way that you want. But because we end up in these feature factory type of organizations, we never go back and ask the questions, are we really solving our core business well? So set yourself up a backlog of things you want to learn about your customers. I managed an itinerary management travel app, which is basically you put in all of your travel information and we keep track of it for you. We had a bunch of features that I was curious, why are people not using sharing as much as we thought that they would? But because my roadmap was so packed with features that we were building, I never had time to really go dig into and understand and ask the questions to get at why people weren't using features that I thought were really great and really important. Second thing, once you've fixed your roadmap, push to remove customer proxies. This is another thing I see a lot in enterprise organizations. I think we all agree, and most people in an agile organization will say, research is good. It's not a controversial statement. People say, yes, we should go research. But when it comes time to actually talk to your customers, everyone wants to give you somebody else who is not actually your customer. It usually starts with the sales team. So you start saying, I want to talk to my end users, and the sales team says, no, we talk to them all the time. We can act as a proxy on their behalf. We know exactly what they need. Come, we can represent their interests. Once you push through the users or through the sales team, then they'll say, it's the manager. Just talk to the manager. You don't need to talk to the end user who's actually using the product. They can tell you everything that they need to know. I've talked to managers. A lot of times they actually don't know what their teams need. They may know at a high level, but they don't know the specific pieces. Then it's consultants. Hey, we've got some consultants. They know what this segment needs. They used to be one of those users, and now they go and they talk to people about how to do that. So they could work and tell you what your users need. And then, of course, my favorite, I'm the product owner. I know everything. I can tell you exactly what customers need. They don't know. I'll use the old Henry Ford quote that if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. That he never actually said. But people believe that they know what their customers want. But the problem with this is that none of these people are your users. They don't actually know the details of what the users need. Customer proxies view the customer needs through their own bias. When you're talking to a sales team member, they're looking at what they need to make that sale, and they're looking at the most recent thing that the customer has told them, not really understanding what the motivation is or what's below the surface. If you're talking to managers, they're thinking about the goals they have for their team, they're thinking about different ways that they want to solve some of those problems, not actually what their team wants. Proxies also lose the nuance of real user needs and behaviors. They may have been in that role in the past, but if they haven't been for a long time, they don't remember all of the little details or the little things that drove them crazy. They start to summarize and aggregate information, and you lose the deep knowledge and the deep individual quotes of why things are the way they are or what pain points there are. So why do we use customer proxies? We use it because it's easy. It is way easier to go talk to your sales team than it is to actually find the right end user and spend time talking to them. It also makes people nervous when you try to go talk to their customers. They want to know, what are you going to say? Are you going to say something that's going to hurt my ability to sell in the future? Are you going to say something I don't want you to say? It ends up being way easier to insert a customer proxy. But at the end of the day, your users want to talk to you. If you've owned a product and you have actually taken the time to talk to a user, the first time that you do, they will talk your ear off for an hour before you can ever even get into the subject you're trying to talk about, because they are desperate to give you their feedback. People want to be heard. So just go talk to them. Take some time, put it in your calendar, make it a regular occurrence to go talk to your users. Because if you don't, you end up building products in a bubble, and you don't build things that your users want. Quick example here. So this was my trip coming here on Sunday. One thing that you'll notice is this really sad 12E, which if you know anything about airplanes means it's a middle seat. And I was really sad about the 3.5-hour flight. So I went and talked to the gate agent when I was at the airport saying, hey, is there anything we can do? Can you help me move my seat? And she did. She starts going through this software and is really struggling with it and says, they just upgraded this thing. These IT people are just not happy unless they're changing things on me all the time. And now I can't figure out how to use this. I don't know what to do. She then started talking and said some things to me that were so powerful. I couldn't wait for the talk. I had to tweet it out right then. She said, they should make these IT people come and try to use this software. And I said, thanks, I'm going to give a talk on this. You just wrote it for me. This is something that happens way more often than we expect. We build something, we think it's really usable, we know what we're doing, but when you get it in the hands of someone who is not tech savvy, who is having to use this thing in a different environment than we're building, on a different network, they're used to some other things, and we've never actually put it in front of the users, you're more likely going to end up making your customer's life harder than you are making it easier. But even if you do go and talk to your users and you continue to move forward, you can't just check the box and make yourself feel warm and fuzzy and say, hey, I went and talked to my users today, I checked my box, I'm ready to go. You actually have to listen to the customers that you talk to. I was recently on a project where we were doing some customer interviews. There was a marketing team in this business who really wanted to build a product. They were so excited about the product that they wanted to build. And we went and started talking to users and discovered not only did the users not need the product that they wanted, a lot of them actively did not want the product to happen. They really did not want what the team wanted to build. But the marketing team continued to try to tell us, we should build this. It doesn't matter, I think we've got it, we should build it. We did a little bit more digging and found out that this was not the first research effort on this product they wanted to build. It was actually the second research effort they had done on this product, and both had come out and said, the customers don't want this. But instead of taking that data and accepting that our original hypothesis was wrong and the thing that we thought we wanted to build wasn't actually needed, people actively wanted to continue building something that was validated to not be needed. It wastes money, it wastes time. If you're not going to listen to your users, then just build the thing, but listen to your users. And then finally, the biggest thing I think that you can do in an enterprise organization is to fight what I have started to call the mysterious they. What's the mysterious they? Have you ever heard this phrase? I'd like to, but they won't let me. There was a time when I had a release for my product. It was really important to me. It wasn't going to drive the company hundreds of thousands of dollars, but to me and to my users, it was really important. But another product in a completely unrelated part of the business had made a really big error, and they froze our data center, would not allow any releases, completely locked down, and there were no exceptions to this rule unless you could prove that it was going to basically cost the company millions of dollars. So I started talking to the enterprise ops team and saying, who do I need to talk to make this happen? And I had people say, there's just no way, they are not going to let this happen. They are not going to let you do this. So I kind of put on my skeptical hat and I started saying, so who's they? Tell me who they is. And I got a quizzical look from the person I was talking to, and he said, what do you mean? And I said, I want to know who they is so I can go talk to them and have a conversation. So is they our CTO? I'll go talk to her. I have no problem doing that. And he said, well, no, it's not. I mean, she doesn't get involved in those kinds of things. Okay, so right below her is a VP. Is it that person? Do I need to go talk to him? Well, no, I mean, he's not really involved in that either. And I walked my way down the org chart until he finally was forced to admit there is no they. It was him that just didn't want to go ask the question or assumed he knew the answer that he would get. So the power of this mysterious they, it deflects responsibility. It lets a person say, well, it's not my fault that we can't get this thing done. It's not my fault that this process is in place. It's they. It's not me. So I'm just following the rules. It gives the appearance of thoughtful decisions. When you say they won't let us do this or they are making us do this, it makes it seem that there is actually a decision being made that's an active decision as opposed to a passive decision from not asking the questions. And it's an easy conversation ender. For the most part, typically when people pull out the mysterious they, it's because they want to exit the conversation and win. But we have to fight this mysterious they so that we can actually move beyond the hidden man behind the curtain. We can stop pretending that there is a wizard and get to the person who is actually able to make some decisions. We have to push back against this. This is a problem that I feel is way more common in enterprise organizations than within startups because the layers of management and the layers of silos as you start to departmentalize and move things out of completely holistic product teams means that you can say that it's someone else's fault without taking that responsibility for yourself. So getting past those false roadblocks will enable real conversations and enable collaboration, which at the end of the day, if we're going to build good products and we're going to use modern product management practices, we have to have collaboration. It has to be turned up way more than it is today. At the end of the day, change is hard. Humans don't like change. Systems don't like change. Systems will actually push back against change. And you can't do it all at once. Most of the time, you'll start to see enterprise organizations try to change, and they'll undergo an agile transformation effort. We like to say these enterprise organizations end up waterfalling their agile transformation effort because they start at the top and they try to plan and they try to train and do it all at once and then pass that all the way down through the organization. And it inevitably fails every time. So just take one area and start to transform that. Take one team, one product, one project, and build it out and start to figure out how to use modern product practices and design thinking and engineering practices so that you can coordinate your team together. If you succeed on one team, that's okay. That is a lot more than will be there today. In large enterprises, we have a unique opportunity. These are organizations that have a lot of power to really change the world. You hear the small startups all the time saying they're going to change the world through whatever piece of technology, and that's great. A lot of them can. But if you really want to know who can impact the world, it's the enterprise organizations with billions of dollars. We just have to help them start using those billions of dollars in productive ways. And one last thing that I want to say to people in the room, don't be afraid of leadership roles in these organizations. It ends up being, I hear a lot of times, particularly people who are in teams that are working well, who are in teams that are doing things right, and start to see some ability to promote into other areas where they can influence more, will actually shy away from that, because it means having to have hard conversations, it means encountering tough situations, it means working with teams that are resistant, who don't want to do things the way that you're doing it. But if we all keep kind of pulling back away from those things, we're not going to be able to make the changes with enterprise organizations that we need. We can bring modern practices into large enterprises. We just all have to work together and collaborate to do it. So that's all I've got. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, everywhere basically at the Daily M. I'll be around to talk more, and thank you.